And I think I was like an average student. I didn't really identify myself as having any particular talents. I wasn't like a singer or a dancer or like a sports person.
I think like when people are growing up, they always wanted to be the point of attention, especially kids who wants to perform. I think there is a stress. You need to like be someone.
People started coming to know, oh, Meghna has this cupcake business. Then my identity became slowly formed around this thing where, okay, this is the girl with the cupcake business. The industry doesn't have a lot of female chefs, especially in commercial settings, which struck me as very contrary to what you would think.
How was the start? Did you rented out a space? How did you find your first customers? What would you say like in 6 years? What would satisfy you?
I want that by that period of time we hit at least 100 crore mark as a brand, and then I will feel like, okay, we have somehow now started making an impact in India.
This is part of Dreamer series, where we delve deep into human psychology to make sense of people. Today's guest is Meghna, an entrepreneur from India who plans to expand her highly successful online bakery to 100 crore business in the next 6 to 10 years. Feel free to watch his story till the end, and as you do it, don't forget to subscribe. It means a lot to me. Maybe we should start by introducing you, Meghna. So who is Meghna?
I'm an entrepreneur based out of Bangalore, India. I run an online bakery called Reminisces, and we've been in business for the last 6 years. We make cakes, cupcakes, gift hampers for individuals and corporate clients, and we've been serving thousands of them across the country over the last many years.
Okay. Before going into your journey, we would take the same format as I've been doing with everyone else. So we should start by asking you, what would be a good memory for you to start from in your life, and go as early as possible. And I would ask you, like, what is your first memory in life, in a sense?
I don't know about first, but I think something I fondly remember is going to Jaipur, where my grandmother lived, my grandparents lived, and just looking at what she used to do. She basically was also an entrepreneur. She had a little cottage industry, and she used to sell Jaipuri prints and garments through exhibitions held across the country. So just going to her house, seeing what she was doing, all the factory workers, sitting with them sometimes, listening to their stories, and then she would make sure that the most delicious Rajasthani things were always made for us. I used to enjoy chole puri and bhindi and some dal bati churma. So lots of delicious things. Food and business has been a core memory for since I was very little.
And are you from Rajasthan? Is your family from Rajasthan?
Yeah. Both my parents are from Rajasthan, although I've never lived there. But we go there often, at least a couple of times a year.
Okay. And back in time, who was Meghna as a child? What was your point of view of the world? How were you as a child?
I think I was very different. I was rather shy. A lot of people used to say that I'm very soft-spoken, a little bit introverted. Yeah, I was very well-mannered, very nice. And one of the core memories from when I was little is also actually with my cousins, because I didn't live in Jaipur, but a lot of them lived around Jaipur, Alwar, Delhi, that area. And so when we would go and get together, I didn't have any siblings. So, it was the first time that I saw how they would tease each other, pull each other's leg, just like fun things that cousins do. And I was the youngest. And there was one time when one of my aunts, she baked a cake. And this has been a running joke in my family ever since, that she baked a cake and for all the cousins, for all the kids. And she put it on the table as soon as it came out of the oven. And it was like piping hot. And it was a sponge. And so I was waiting on the side that somebody will serve me. I was waiting with my plate, and all my cousins, no spoon, no nothing. They put their hands in in the
The
pan,
cake.
and all of them just like gobbled it up. And since then, it's been a running joke that we never gave Meghna that cake, and that's why she opened a bakery of her own. so, so yeah.
I think you had a good set of cousins. And what were your like what was the family like? What were your parents doing at that time in Jaipur, and who was around you at that time, except from your cousins?
My parents actually moved out of Jaipur much earlier than when I was born. A lot of my childhood was in Bangalore, and my mom was a doctor, so she took a break in my early years to raise me. So when I started like going to school and stuff, I saw her studying a lot, working, during her PG and things like that. I saw my dad was actually part of the insurance industry, and he was in the training and development side of the insurance industry. So I don't have too many memories of that. Some work trips here and there, maybe we went to their office. But I do remember that he also really used to love food. And so we used to kind of joke at the dinner table that we would open a business together called Chatokra Chatokri, which in North India means like Mr. and like a female and male version of foodies kind of thing. So yeah, so that probably while growing up, that's what I remember about them.
Yeah, there is always like from all the things you talk about, there is always food is a major part in life quite
Yeah.
early, and there is all this kind of nice fond memories that connects back to who you are right now, which is quite nice to listen to. Was there any expectations of who you should be when you were growing up? Were your parents kind of like asking you like, oh, this is the path, this is where you should be?
No, actually, I was very lucky that way. That a lot, I think not my parents, but people around me, a lot of them were surprised that I didn't want to become a doctor like my mom was. And my mom's entire family is either a doctor or an engineer. And so that was like a very obvious path. A lot of my cousins also are doctors now. But I actually, because she was studying while I was in school, I would see her textbooks and I would look at those diagrams and those images, and I would just feel so disgusted by all of that. And I would be like, I absolutely don't want to go on that path. But no, in school, or even later, my parents, by God's grace, never kind of pushed me to any one direction. They did, of course, want me to do well at school, and I think I was like an average student, maybe a little bit above average. And all I kind of heard was, okay, you have a lot of potential from parent teacher meetings and stuff. So you have a lot of potential, but I never really discovered what potential they were talking about till much later, I guess.
Yeah. And how was, so you were a child growing up, your parents were supportive of where you wanted to go. Is there any memories from Bangalore when you were a child? Where did you study? Did you have friends? Were you like a social person? How was life at that time?
I studied in a school called Kumarans, and now I really adore that school. But at that time, I don't think that was the case. It was rather strict, and by strict, I mean it was hard. Like our tests and exams were always harder than anybody else, any other school, around us. And their whole logic was that by the time you come to your board exams, your level will be so much higher that you will do well in your board exam. We never knew whether that logic is going to be, it makes any sense or not. But we had to really go through the grind because they would never let you score well. They would. It was a hard place. But having said that, I did make some really good lifelong friends in school. I was still I remember we were a set of 5 friends up until 10th standard, and I didn't really identify myself as having any particular talents, So I wasn't like a singer or a dancer or like a sports person or anything like that, and all of my friends were. So I was the one who would like cheer for them on the sidelines and feel very happy for them. But I wasn't on the stage or on the ground or like, in the forefront pretty much ever.
Yeah, more of like, I think like when people are growing up, they always wanted to be the point of attention, especially kids who wants to perform. I think there is a stress. You need to like be someone or like, find a path quite early. And yeah, people kind of feel like people who stand on the side, like cheering for others. Yeah, they don't get most attention, but you can also see like they are children as well who has a developing mind, and maybe in time they would kind of excel in something they find interesting. Did you want to be something at that time? Were you like having ambitions on some field or some place to be?
I didn't think so, but a few years ago, we did discover the yearbook. And I think around 11th, 12th was when I started having some ambition. And in the 12th standard yearbook, I had written that I want to be the best pastry chef in India, which I didn't know that I had actually written that. And eventually, I didn't end up being a pastry chef, but still in a very similar field. But it came probably after 10th. Up till 10th, up till I was 15, 16 years old, I didn't have anything at all. And then in 11th grade, I went to a summer baking class, like in my apartment, just for something to do, which is when that that bug sat in my head, and those thoughts started coming, and some aspirations and ambitions came about.
Yeah, but yeah, I feel like when I talk to you again, the kind of memories you have is still about food. And you kind of wanted to do it quite early. I get that sense you always wanted to do it quite early. But maybe you didn't realize it at some point as a serious thing to do. And how was after high school? What did you choose to follow?
So I took 11th and 12th, and I took commerce in 11th and 12th, and then I took BCom honors in college. And I took all of that as a very, like, I remember choosing commerce because I didn't like science. Like, that was my only logic. It wasn't because I wanted to be a business person or anything like that. Like, it was very process of elimination driven. But yeah, that's that. I chose commerce. We came to college. After we came to college, I realized that because our school was so academically inclined, and it just used to push us so hard, that in college there was a huge pool of people from all over the country and all kinds of schools, and it didn't push us so much, so I had so much more free time. And because I had that free time and I was still living at home, so a lot of kids who come to college, they come from different cities, so they need to use that free time to figure out their living situation, their PG or whatever, making new friends. But for me, it was all the same. I lived at home. I had the same friends who came to the same college. So I just had that time, and after a point of time, I felt very bored. I was just like, what am I doing? Which is when I started selling cupcakes. It was almost out of like, okay, I want to do something, and put some stalls here and there, and then gave a name to the business. At that time, Facebook was more famous. So we made a Facebook page and said, okay, now I'm going to start taking orders. And it kind of like, that's how it started.
And what year was this? And where did you study? Did you study in Christ?
Yeah, I went to Christ year.
Christ Bangalore. Okay.
It was
And what year was around this? What is happening right now?
2015.
15.
2000, yeah, it would have been around 14, 15. It was my second year of college. And so what happened was, one of my friends, she asked if I would bake a box of cupcakes for her brother. And it was the first time that someone wanted to place an order. So I was like, okay, if I'm making for her, then maybe I can make for more people in my class. And I asked someone who had a DSLR if she would like to come to my house and take pictures of some of the cupcakes I'm making. And she also agreed. I don't know how she agreed for 200 rupees. I gave her 200 rupees and I hosted her for lunch with my family, and she was more happy because she had homemade food after like a year. And we just had a ball taking pictures of those cupcakes, and then I put it on my class WhatsApp group, and then I saw a lot of interest from there. I was surprised that we were around 70 people in the class, but I got orders for 90 cupcakes. And but then of course if people had ordered, then I had to kind of honor it. So I worked late into the night to make those cupcakes, and took them once, then took them twice, and started taking them regularly, until one of the professors in Christ, she saw that all of this material was under my desk, the frosting and the cupcakes and all of that, and she was like, what is going on? Where are your books? You can't be doing this inside the classroom. So I didn't take it very seriously. Like, I didn't take the business very seriously. So I just said, sorry, okay, I won't do it, kind of thing. But to my surprise, there were one or two people in my class who actually stood up and said, no, why can't she do it? There's so many people running businesses in college, selling different things. Why can't she also sell? And so it started like that. And then another professor who was more supportive, he said, okay, you can't do this in the classroom, but I'll collect you to the cafeteria. And if you like, you can sell to them and they can then sell your product ahead. And yeah, so that's where it really, started shaping up.
Yeah, I'm quite interested. So what happened? So they connected you to the cafeteria, and then what kind of business talk did you have early? How did you communicate with them? How did you understand what they require?
It was actually, I think he really just did me a favor, because I was like this young person who wanted to do something, because he was barely making any margin on that. I would sell it to him for 40 rupees, and he would sell it ahead for 45 rupees, and I would get it once a week. And we could barely communicate because he spoke Malayalam and I spoke Hindi or English. So looking back, I feel like it was just a nice person who gave a girl a break, But for me at that time, it was a really big deal. Because every Monday I would keep my cupcakes there. And then after lunch, I would, like towards the end of the lunch break, I would go to his store and collect whatever money we made from the cupcakes. Or if any cupcakes, one or two cupcakes were left, I would take that back as well. And just collecting that money and counting that cash made me so happy that, in a time where maybe my peers were not, not really in an earning situation at that time. Internships and stuff were not that big. So yeah, so that's where it went from there.
And how did you come up with the recipe? Was it like, initially did you like go with a recipe that you found online, or were you thinking a lot about like, should I make some changes in the recipe? How was your thinking in creating the product itself?
So I think it started because of the class that I went for in my apartment, and she was of the firm belief that baking cannot be done without egg. And my father, because we come from a religion where egg and stuff is not okay, so he was not okay with that. He was like, you want to do whatever you want to do outside the house, but when you are inside my house, it cannot be baked with egg. And because my first teacher told me you can't do it. And then my father told me this. So there were quite a few arguments over there. And then finally, I saw some egg replacements and I saw some recipes online, and just very organically, like with the base recipe, made some changes, and came up with a recipe that I used actually for many, many, many years. After that, I had been using the same recipe. Only very recently, maybe a year ago, we made some changes to it. But apart from that, that really worked really well for us, and people were very surprised by how soft it was, and the texture and everything, even though it didn't have egg. That was something that even today people are very like, they feel like there's just no difference.
Yeah, I see. I talked to quite some people who started business, and I kind of, when sometimes I feel like there are some divine intervention in people's life. For example, you're born into this kind of family that don't use eggs, and talking about food early, and going to grandma and enjoying food, and just randomly studying how to bake things in high school summer, and then starting it from uni and expanding it. So I feel like in many ways you're supposed to do that. I can see a lot of things making sure you do it. But let's.
I think you summarized it in like 2 sentences, but and it looks like as though it was all meant to happen one after the other. But I guess at that time you just don't realize.
Yeah, it's only when you look from the future you understand why the past is set in a certain way. But what happened after that? So you've been selling it to the cafeteria, and how long did it go on to? Till maybe like end of your university studies?
Yes, absolutely till the end. So what happened then is people started coming to know, oh, Meghna has this cupcake business, and little talk here and there that, oh, this is my friend that makes cupcakes. So then my identity became slowly formed around this thing where, okay, this is the girl with the cupcake business. And we also had a chance to go for business plan competitions. Now, what has happened recently, I think in the last 3-4 years, is Shark Tank has come to India. But at that time, the same version where you're presenting a business plan in a small period of time to investors was called a business plan competition or B plan competition. So they used to have these in different colleges, and someone told me, another professor, she told me to apply for this, and I applied, but I was not very competitive or anything, so I applied and I forgot about it and I didn't bother checking anything, and so we got selected in the next round. But there was a lot of work that one had to do for that next round, and I was not very keen to do anything about it, so I didn't act on it. But that organizing committee, someone called me from there, and she was like, hundreds of teams from across the country have applied, and you've got selected to the next round, so you better send in your entry, because somebody didn't get selected because you got selected. So she almost like scolded me, and I was like, okay, I'm sorry. And I sent in the entry. Now, then we got selected to the final round also, where they told us to come to Trichy. So this competition was in NIT Trichy. And I was like, oh no, Christ will not give us attendance, because Christ is known for very strict attendance rules. And that same professor who told me about the competition, she was like, absolutely not, like, you have to go, I'll take care of your attendance. So I said, okay. And I remember my best friend, she was also part of the team. Me and my mom, we went to this place, and I genuinely enjoyed it, because the thing about this particular competition was that anybody from across the country could enroll. And it was not like a university, like you're representing your university. It was just that you're representing your business. You didn't have to be a student. So because of that, what happened is we were the youngest team there, and we were also the only girls team there. And then we won third place. And so that was like a huge boost in my confidence, because the judges who were looking at our business plan, they were also investors, and the conditions of that competition were such that if you win any one of the first, second or third place, then they will be ready to incubate you. So the judges were from Mumbai Angels and Indian Angel Networks. And as an 18-year-old with an offer to be incubated, and then we went and met the Indian Angel Network folks at their office in Delhi. And they said, this is the process, this is a 12-month thing. And so at that time, I had not thought that this thing can actually be a business. But then when we got the validation through that competition, And when we saw interest from external parties, then we were like, oh no, we can actually run this like full time. And so that really kind of changed things for me, how I felt like about myself, about what I can do. We didn't take up the incubation opportunity. I was like, no, I want to finish studying and then I'll see about all this, because I don't know how, like this equity, I don't understand. So I'm not doing all this. But yeah, and so by the time I graduated from college, I was very certain that at some point I want to start this business only. But that some point was like somewhere in the future, not a defined period. But I want to work in this industry before I start a business here, because I did BCom and it's not hospitality or culinary or pastry where you actually learn more. So then I went on to work in a food tech startup called Inner Chef. I was there for about a year and a half, and then I left from there. I did an internship at a bakery, and then I started Dream a Dozen 2 years after I graduated.
Yeah, wanted to like make some points like with the business plan you went. Was it about the same thing you were doing, baking?
It was, yeah. It was an extension of that. At that time, we were only doing it like for some stalls and flea markets, as well as supplying it to the cafeteria. But the idea was to have a cupcake food truck, and I was very fascinated by it. I used to watch it on like TLC. I remember that there used to be these food truck shows when we were younger. But I wanted to have a cupcake food truck. Then in the third year, I did a research paper on the feasibility of having a food truck in India, because you have to do a research, you have to submit a research paper, and I somehow convinced them to let me take this topic. But when I did that, and when I actually spoke to food truck owners, that's when I realized that this is not in India. It was a very gray area, and you can't like scale the business only having a food truck. So then we left that idea.
Yeah, but definitely an interesting idea even back then, like food truck, especially for baking. So at least like people would think like this is so out of the box in a sense. And what did you do with Inner Chef? So what was your role? What did you study from that you used later in your venture?
Yeah, so Inner Chef was a funded startup. So the way that they operated was very different from a business that would start from scratch, bootstrap with your own money, which eventually that's what I ended up doing. But I joined Inner Chef because they had an opening in a category called Indulge, which was their desserts category, where they would source desserts from home bakers across the city, stock it up in their own inventory, list it on their website, and sell it to their customers. So they would take up the responsibility of sales and marketing, and the production would happen by home bakers. So that's what I joined for. Eventually, I went on to take on a different category. That was the biryani category, which was very out of my comfort zone because I'm a vegetarian. And then went on to do a little bit of operations. And then I left after that.
Okay. And I feel like again you touch the right places where you can use a lot of your skills later, and it matches with your serious hobby.
I think
What happened?
by that time it was intentional. By that time I understood that this is what I wanted to do.
And at this point, what was your worldview? What did you think about the world? What did you think about what you're doing, people around you? So who were you at that time?
I think somewhere in college when I started these business plan competitions, and I think it was in college, it was in college during the research for the business plan competitions. I discovered a business called Wicked Good Cupcakes in the US, and I discovered them through a Shark Tank episode, a Shark Tank US episode, because of which I discovered Shark Tank. And so I went through a phase in life where I became obsessed with watching Shark Tank US. And it was so like I was very infatuated by business and entrepreneurship. And my worldview was, if you work hard, you can do anything. There is nothing that is impossible. I read books that really inspired me. There were two books written by the founder of, not the founder, the CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz. And that also really impacted me because it kind of strengthened the idea that a business can grow while having very strong ethics. And sometimes businesses are looked at in a way that they're very they're very growth oriented and they'll do anything for growth and profit. But learning about Starbucks and some other businesses on the way, when I read some more books, I really felt that they can impact the world very positively, and you can do it in one lifetime. You don't need like many generations to build a big business. So I suddenly became a very the world is your oyster kind of mentality.
Person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe with a right moral compass as well. Because in business, that's the hard part. Like, like people get sucked by greed, power, and it's important to create a good moral compass when you move through development. And what happened after? So now you finished your inner chef. What was the next step? What did you want to do?
So I actually left Inner Chef a little bit out of um, it was a startup at the end of the day, even if it was funded. And so I felt that they were not strong enough processes. And I left because I wanted to join a bigger company which had very strong processes. So in my idea, I was like, I have done work experience at a startup. Now I want some at a large company that's still food related. And because I had read these books about Starbucks, it became my dream company. And even though I don't drink coffee, and like I'm not really a customer of Starbucks, but for me that thing about like Tata and Starbucks being together in India, and Tata is also a company that's really respected for its ethics, was like a dream opportunity. And I was very I didn't care what department they gave me a job in, as well as long as somewhere I got a position. So after Inner Chef, I reached out to them in every possible way. I wrote to every single person who said they're employed in Starbucks on LinkedIn. And for many weeks, I kept writing. I was finally able to get in touch with one person, but it was seeming very unlikely that I would get an opportunity, which is when I asked one of our neighbors who runs a very large scale bakery if I could train at his place. So I was like, I've given my resignation anyway, I have time, and until these folks get back to me or any company gets back to me, I might as well do an internship or some training. So that's where I went and kind of learned about how things were done on a massive scale. They had 300 people in their factory, and that was only one of their factories. And they had multiple shops that the factory supplied to. So I got experience over there, and parallelly I was also talking to Starbucks, trying that some position opens up. They had actually told me that they didn't have any open positions, although he agreed to meet me and he understood how passionate I was. But they also look for slightly more senior people, more experience, maybe a master's degree or so. And it didn't align. So I was like, okay, fine. Then if this isn't looking likely, then the next best thing is that I'll just start on my own and we'll see. So I thought I started thinking about a name.
Before we jump into that, I have a few questions. First is like, how did you talk to your neighbor? Was it like just going and like saying, hi, I would like to work for you? And the second is that when you work for them, what are the processes you kind of learned? What was the learning happening from that place?
Yeah, so I mean, he's very senior in the industry as well as in age. So I was almost a little bit not scared, but like like he's a very big personality. Although he's very, very humble. And so actually my mom and I went because my mom knew the family. She was also their doctor. So she kind of requested and said that my daughter would really like to do something with you. He was so nice. He said, our doors are open. As long as you want to learn, you can learn. I'll send someone with you to see all the factories, all the shops, whichever shop, whichever factory you feel comfortable in, you go, you stay for as many hours in the day you want. He literally, I was so blessed to get that opportunity. And I said that I'll do half the time, I'll do 3 months in total, and half the time in the factory and half the time in the shop. And that was also Christmas time, which was the busiest time for their business. And then in the factory, I was in each department for a week. So I was in the breads department, their cookies department, their storeroom, and then their cakes. And the cakes, I was a little bit more interested. So I think I did a longer period of time, 2-3 weeks there. And I had never seen like people making cakes at that speed. Like you see it on YouTube, but then it's very different. And you don't see what an industrial setting is like in YouTube. Like these guys, they were literally in 30 seconds, they were just like, whipping up cakes. They working, their hands were just like so used to the whole process. So it was amazing. I learned what a skill is. I don't think I ever acknowledged the meaning of the word skill, which is an art form that your hand learns. Yeah, so how to hold a knife and things. So I wasn't good at it at all, but they were very patient. They would just give me one cake, give me a cake stand, and just have me on the corner and say, okay, you keep making this cake again and again. You remove the cream, put the cream, remove the cream, put the cream. Just keep doing the same thing. It's okay. But just the fact that I got to observe everything that's happening around me was amazing. One other observation that I had from there was that the industry doesn't have a lot of female chefs, especially in commercial settings, which struck me as very contrary to what you would think, because in the domestic setting in India, usually women are in the kitchen, but over here that was not the case. So so those were the things that I learned from there.
Yeah, and maybe like also like how to instruct or improve the level of skill. They might have got some level of instruction to act in a certain way, so the process is speed and everything is done well, so you would understand that as well. But that's cool. And then what happened after that? So you did an short time in the place, and then you were looking for a name. So that's where we stopped a little bit before. So you're looking for your own venture and thinking about a name. Okay, let's talk from there.
In parallel, actually, I was doing the training as well at Cakewala, and at the same time, I was also thinking of a name, thinking of a logo. One of my childhood friends, she eventually studied design, so I was like, okay, you studied design, I want to start a bakery, will you make a logo for me? And she designed a logo for us. So that was towards the end of 2017. And then what happened was that Starbucks came back and they actually made an offer for a role in Bombay, and it was nice. I think I would have enjoyed myself, and it was one of the most confusing times of my life till that point. But I said that, okay, now that I've decided to do my own business, and it's just the thought of being able to actually be in a position where you are saying the world is your oyster and you can't literally do anything was so, like, I just felt so free that I couldn't then again place myself in the corporate setting. And I spent a lot of time after that trying to prove that I took the right decision.
And how did you make that right decision? Was it like a gut feeling? Was it like a calculated, like strategic, let's go and do this for a period of time and think about what else is there? How did you, like, people have a hard time making decisions. It would be nice to tell them like how did you make yours?
Honestly, I wish I had an answer for that. It was very confusing. I spoke to so many people, and sometimes when you speak to so many people, it's like an analysis paralysis situation. And although my parents did not want to directly push me in any direction, and even now, if I talk to them about it, they'll say, no, we were very neutral, we didn't tell you anything. But I feel like they wanted me to take up the Starbucks role because they also really respected the company. But I think at the end of the day, it was just that feeling of saying, "Oh my God, now, like I have a logo." So now, I went off to the other side. If you came 1 month ago,
Now I
maybe
have to do it.
now I have to do it. So yeah, that's how.
Even and then what happened after that? So you started. How was the start? Did you rented out a space? How did you find your first customers? Let's go through the process of how you started.
It was very organic, very one by one, very slow. In the sense that literally just decided that we started because we started an Instagram page, and we were like, okay, the day we started the Instagram page is the uh, incorporation date for our business. So started from home, was baking everything myself. A friend of mine was looking at the marketing piece of it, and at that time marketing was simply just posting on Instagram. I was talking to customers. So some customers were just out of my own groups. I put it here and there in the apartment, asked people to forward it. I think the first time I started getting customers that were not people I knew or people who knew me was when I enlisted on Zomato, and then someone got my number, and that's when we actually started getting like business started growing.
Yeah, and Zomato could be like even at that time. This is happening 2017, 2018, right?
18 beginning, yep.
Yeah, in the beginning, and I haven't been living there long, but still I know that there was not a lot of baking happening in Zomato, so you could be quite early into that space, avoiding a lot of competition. Have you ever felt like that?
I never really thought so much about competition. My view on that is that India really has such a high population and enough buyers for almost every tier, every price range, every quality, you will find a buyer. So I've never thought that okay, this is a high competition, low competition kind of thing. Maybe now that I know a little bit more, I'm like, oh, this business has low barrier to entry, so home bakers also are into this, and large establishments are also into this. But everybody finds their niche, and everyone finds their audience, and there's space for everyone to succeed.
In many ways, I would say you avoided the unwanted complexity by simplifying everything. Basically, said that this is going to work, and there is definitely a niche for it. Let's go on and let's see what happens. So you started putting it in Zomato. You started selling cupcakes. How did it evolve? How did it go?
It went well. So, I mean, I was doing it from home, and because of that, I needed some lead time, and I only had that size of oven, so I was limited in the production capacity. And I remember one of my friends, she used to work for Standard Chartered at the time, and she told me that she connected me to someone in their admin team from their Bangalore office, and they had some, I don't remember now, but basically thousands of employees. Her sentence to me was, Meghna, if this works out, like you will just have thousands of orders. And uh, in my head, I was like, if I have those many orders, I won't be able to service them because I just can't do it from home. And I think that was in the first 4-5 months of running the business from home. And as soon as I got the thought that, oh my God, there's a potential for high demand, but there is also a possibility that I won't be able to service it, I was like, no, it's time to move out of home. So it took us some time. It took us a couple of months to find a place. And then I started, I had our first hire and things. But I think by August we were live from a commercial space. And yeah, that's how we made that transition.
And did you get that big order from Standard Chartered,
No,
which you were?
yeah, what an irony. We never got it. I think she was very naive to think that that process is that easy. Now that I've been in business for longer, I know that it just takes a lot of like paperwork and formalities and levels and approvals. But I'm really glad that that thought occurred and I took the next step.
Yeah, it's again divine intervention at right times, pushing you in the right force to move. And then you took a space, a commercial space, and you did a few hiring. I would think. How did it happen from there? So how were you ever concerned about like, okay, the business is slowing down, or should we go to a new niche? So how was the thinking? Because now you are not from home. You have to pay a rent to a space, and you need to pay salary to people. So how was that thinking?
Actually, the first 2-3 years, I never felt that the business is slowing down or anything, because one is that you're working with much smaller numbers. So even if you do a little bit better, it looks like the business is doubling, right? It's much easier to go from 1 to 2 than 5 to 10. So in that sense, it was always like every small milestone was also really celebrated, and we were really like pumped and full of energy. Uh, so that was fine. That was never a concern. Maybe in the later years, in my fourth, fifth, sixth year, now sometimes I have that concern that, oh no, which is also maybe the reason we're looking at rebranding and things like that. But at that time we were just like, let's do it, 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 let's do it. So we were working 14-15 hours a day. It was no big deal. Even we didn't even think that we were working that much. There were more full-time people, and then we would get some interns and stuff. And we would take every opportunity we got. Like today there are many of those orders that we would not take because maybe it's not our specialty, or it's not what we set out to do. But at that time, anything was like, okay, let's do it. So yeah, it was a fun time.
And they all came organically to you, or were you marketing at this time a bit more?
We were trying to figure out marketing. In fact, I remember we put out a thing that we want interns, and it was totally like an unpaid internship. And so many people, so many of my juniors and customers and all kinds of students reached out and said, we don't care if it's unpaid, but we love what you're doing and we just want to be a part of it. And so our marketing team was actually like the largest team because we had so many unpaid interns. So we did a bunch of like fun stuff. We hosted a lot of offline events, workshops. We went to different co-working spaces and hosted workshops. We built relationships in different corporates. We worked with some event management companies. Some of them actually ended up giving us more than 50% of our business at one time was event management companies. So yeah, lot of different things in terms of marketing. We were just pushing. At that time, I think by the second year, I'd stopped baking myself. It would be at very rare occasions that I would get into the kitchen. It would mostly be that I'm like on the road trying to meet new people, going for stalls, even getting our produce. Like I would go to what we call as metro over there, buy whatever stuff, load it into the car, get it. So yeah, I was like the person who was doing all the running around, and the chefs were then making the orders.
Yeah, wanted to point out again, like when people listen to like, oh, unpaid internships, it only works if you have a good brand. Because they would really like to learn from you and want to be connected to you, and they have a good impression of who you are. That's why it works. So anyone who's listening, that's the reason why people want to work for you. And then how did you pivot to, or I feel like the way you talk, it has always been enterprises who kind of was your major end customers. How was that thinking? Was it always event management companies, or was it other people as well?
I think the first time I was introduced to this was in the Inner Chef days, where they used to work with B2B clients. And B2B didn't mean event management so much, but it meant corporate clients like multinational companies who would take for their events directly. And because I saw that in Inner Chef, I recognized that there's a huge potential there. But what happened with us is that during COVID, we had to close for 2 months. And that was also the time that we were done in our existing commercial space and we had to move to the next one, like a bigger setup. So we were going to move, and I think, we had just moved. We were going to launch that place, and then COVID hit and we had to shut down and we were closed. And so it was like a very, very difficult time. And then when we came back, in a few months, the festive season was coming, which is a big season for us. So Diwali and Christmas was coming, and our corporate clients, they said that all this cake and cupcake is okay, but we can't ship it across the country. So unless you can give us something that can go to everyone's houses, because everyone's now working remotely, we can't purchase from you. So when we realized that we have to find a business model where the product is long shelf life, the packaging is sturdy, and we know how to ship pan-India. And that Diwali, when we finally cracked that, we realized that the corporate market is so huge, because then you can service every branch of any company that is across the country. So once that happened, what parallelly happened because of the business we got from those folks was that we were able to employ so many more women during that festive time. And it would like, there would literally be no place to step on the floor also. Like, there would just be people and boxes and hampers and the whole assembly line everywhere in the kitchen. It was such a lively time. It was the hardest time also, there's no doubt about it. But the most memorable in the year, and also the time we make most money. I was like, why can't we do this throughout the year? And then we started looking at opportunities in the year where we can work with corporates apart from their festive gifting.
Okay. And at this time, I'm thinking like it's quite maybe like 4 years into the business or even more. How many people were you employing? And I also read in your website, it's all woman kitchen. What is that thinking around that? What made you feel like this is the setup I'm going to go with?
I think one thing was a realization that I had from Cakewala, and then also like the other interactions that I had in the industry about the representation of women in the industry. In the beginning, it was very organic, in the sense that the first commercial kitchen that we had, it wasn't in a very like fancy place. So because it was like a closed door, it was almost like a residential house that we converted into a commercial space. So we just wanted it to be safe for the couple of girls that we had hired. And so it just kind of like organically happened. And then later it became intentional. When we started seeing, we started seeing statistics across the industry. And also my experiences at Cakewala, and also just the impact that it was having on the lives of the people that we were employing, the lives of the girls that we were employing, because many of them didn't come with pastry education or even basic school education, was, just in government schools. But because we were able to teach them the skill that didn't require you to, have a college degree, that skill was able to earn them a livelihood and, earn them respect in their families and in their in the society where they were coming from. So that slowly, that happened over many years. But as we were able to replicate it across different people, we were just like, okay, we have to do this because we have the ability to do it, and it's important that somebody takes it up.
And empower people. It's very important to do because I feel like with a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility. Uh, just like in the movie, with a lot of luck and with a lot of opportunity, it's important you give back to society and give back to people who really want help. So it's good of you. um, and then like let's move on to the last phases of what is happening. So what is happening right now with the company? um, I don't know if I could ask you numbers, but how is it performing overall, and how what do you see in the future as well?
We're doing very well. We started doing, like I said in the beginning, that we started taking almost every opportunity that would come, and there were varying types of opportunities that would come in varying degrees. Someone might request that, oh, my grandmother doesn't have gluten and sugar and uh, something else, so can you please make this recipe? I found it from the internet, can you make it for us, right? Or another corporate will say, we want your chocolates in a gift hamper, but we also want speakers and a diary and a bottle, can you make it for us? So then we just became a little bit diluted, I feel, in terms of the services that we provided, because we said yes, and that meant that our energies were not focused in one direction in the last maybe a couple of years. And now I'm in a place where I kind of recognize that, and I am very conscious that I am proud of how far we've come, but I want to go much, much further in the next 6 years. It should be a compounding effect of everything that we've learned and experienced. And at the rate that we have grown, if we continue to grow at that rate in the next 6 years, I will not be satisfied. So something has to change. And that change is that focused direction towards one audience, one positioning for the business, really being known for a couple of things that you do damn well. And that is the direction that we're heading in. So we're going through like a rebranding phase. We're working with specialists to do it the right way. I kind of joke sometimes that when I started the business, I would just sell whatever I like to eat. Like that was how I used to decide what's going to go on the menu. But now I understand that you have to be very conscious of who is your target audience, what do they like, where is a larger market, how are you going to make it more comfortable for them to buy. So there's so many things to take into consideration, which I've learned over time, and I feel like it's time now to apply all those learnings, do it in the right way, and then see how far we can take it.
Okay, and what would you say, like in 6 years, what would satisfy you when it comes to, I don't know, like revenue or people employed or number of cupcakes sold? What would be a place that you would say, like, okay, I feel close to being satisfied?
I mean, it's very, it's a little bit audacious at this point, but I want that by that period of time we hit at least 100 crore mark as a brand, and then I will feel like, okay, we have somehow now started making an impact in India, and then perhaps the next decade will be going outside of India.
That's really good. That's really good. And to make that kind of calculation, it means you have a good ground. Because the more I talk to you, I understand you have a good feeling for the market and you've been in the field for a long time. So if you make that kind of judgment, you feel like it is possible if you make some adjustments. What would you say? Who is Megna now? I asked it I'm asking this for the third time. Who are you right now?
I think, I mean, being an entrepreneur is still a big part of my identity, but I've also understood that our identity is made up of the different roles that we play in life. And I'm very attached to my family. And so that part of me, that part of my identity also, like, I would be very proud of the relationships that I have in life. And so for that reason, I would say Meghna is also somebody who really values her relationship. She's also someone who's a very driven entrepreneur, also someone who does ethical business, does it well, does it for impact. And then I think somewhere along the way, I also realized I need to have different types of interests, because I remember someone asked me, what hobby do you have? And I was like, I had one hobby. I made it a business, and now I don't have any hobbies. And
I mean,
she was like, what? And so then 2 years ago, I started horse riding, and I really enjoyed that. I fell in love with horses, and so whenever I get the chance, I do that as well. So completely depends on the context in terms of how you're asking who is Meghna, but um, yeah, I would like to be remembered as someone who made a difference.
okay. I think we came to the end of the interview. To anyone who wants to know Meghna, I would put her Instagram handle or whichever handle she would like me to keep. Please find her and follow her journey and support her as much as you could. I would like to talk to you for 5 minutes after the interview,
Sure.
but we will stop the interview now.
Sure.